Hey there, friends. David Dabtorch. David Lightbringer here to talk about some more archetypes. We talked about the Horned God, Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm, earlier this week. Thanks for watching that video. And we are back to talk about Dunk, the Fossaways, Sir Arlen of Pennytree, and a couple others. So once again, we are doing archetypal analysis, meaning just talking about the characters as the type of people, the type of story character they are. And I don't really have a fancy intro to give you, so let's just get right into it. Thanks for clicking on my video. Do make sure you're subscribed if you enjoy this kind of stuff. And of course, every Sunday you can find us live right here on the channel. Me and Grey Waste Tim and Estella Graves breaking it down with fresh reactions. Alrighty. So here's what I got for you today. We're going to talk about Dunk first as the unlikely hero, with the little Arlen of Pennytree as the Mr. Miagi, or if you prefer, the Obi-Wan, or if you prefer, the Ned Stark. We're going to talk some more Dragon Slayer mythology, which actually ties back into the unlikely hero, but is kind of its own thing. We're going to talk entitled Lecherous Nobles. There's a lot of those running around. We're going to talk about the brothers fighting, again with the Fossaways, but extending beyond the Fossaways. And even the Cosmic World Tree will make an appearance. So one episode in and already the archetypes are exploding off the screen. Very cool. And we are beginning with Dunk. Again, the unlikely hero. Dunk is innocent, as in naive. He did grow up in Flea Bottom, so he does have a certain amount of street smarts when it comes to, you know, fighting for scraps with other beggar kids. But in terms of Dunk rolling up to the tourney at Ashford Meadow, he is naive and innocent and just in over his head. I mean, there are princes about. Come on, we gotta have some standards here. So Dunk is no prince. Again, dressed like a farmer. He stinks and draws flies. That's what the joke about, you know, come back but don't bring your escorts was about. The flies are his escorts. So yeah, even Dunk can smell his own clothes at this point. And honestly, when we talk about Hedge Knight, we joke about it, but the people of Westeros look at Hedge Knights basically as homeless people. Not to bring up the smell again, but if you don't have access to a shower, you're not going to smell good. That's not a virtuous thing. It's just a matter of having access to a shower. But even more than that, it's a class thing. You know, Dunk is basically invisible to the High Lords like Aerion Brightflame or Manfred Dondarrion, who we'll talk about later on, much in the same way that homeless people are kind of invisible to a lot of people. Dunk is clinging on tightly to the couple of shreds of legitimacy he has, namely his sword. So when Stefan Fossaway asks him, hey, is that a long sword you carry? He's like, it's mine by rights, as if he's Stannis clinging to the thrones, mine by rights. And of course, Sir Stefan says, oh, that's an odd thing to say for someone who definitely owns their sword free and clear. And it's not even necessarily that Dunk stole the sword. Obviously, it comes from his master, Sir Arlen. But the point is, it's literally the only thing that marks Dunk as a knight. And I really did have to empathize with Dunk when the sex workers were making fun of him and calling him sad. And then he's walking away, talking to his horse, saying, we're not sad. Certainly not rising to the level of a comment sad, to which I say, yes, sometimes I look tired in my video, but certainly not rising to the level of making a comment tired, although I will attempt to say Minas Morgul correctly in the future. That did deserve a comment. I'm sorry. And then there was the time I said Vagar for an entire video about Vagar, just for funsies. But I still say that if Vagar was supposed to be pronounced Vagar, Vagar would be spelled like Rhaegar and not Vagar. Anyway. So Knight of the Seven Kingdoms starts with a very archetypal moment, which is the death of the learned master. Dunk's Obi-Wan, Sir Arlen of Pennytree, has just died and left him alone in the world to fend for himself. That didn't happen to Luke until halfway through the second movie.
Hold on.
Well, of course I know him. It's me.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Halfway through the first movie, Dave. Don't you ever forget it again.
We are picking up Dunk's story right at that important moment when his master has passed on. As we've begun to see in the flashbacks, Sir Arlen basically adopted Dunk as a feral street kid in King's Landing, and he certainly taught Dunk a lot about arms and training and what it takes to be a knight in the subsequent years. Dunk is still a long way from prepared, and this is underscored by the kids playing with toy swords in the background right behind Dunk, playing at being a knight, right as he is asked, are you really a knight? Because you look like a farmer. So is Dunk, in fact, just an overgrown kid playing at being a knight? Perhaps. He's certainly wondering that. Now, one version of the unlikely hero archetype, a subtype, if you will, is the orphan. So Dunk is an orphan, Luke Skywalker is an orphan, Jon Snow is an orphan, Rand al'Thor is an orphan. But the one thing that makes Dunk different is that he doesn't have any sort of secret paternity to discover. He's not a king, he's not secretly noble, he really is no one. That's right, he's not Palpatine's granddaughter or a clone of Palpatine or however that was supposed to work. And a moment ago, I mentioned Mr. Miyagi, of course, from The Karate Kid. And although Daniel-san is not an orphan, he too is in over his head. And kind of the key thing to that movie is that Mr. Miyagi teaches Daniel hard work, karate, but also helps him find his identity. Just as Obi-Wan helps Luke Skywalker discover his identity, and just as Ned teaches Jon how to be a good Northman before he dies, as well as all the other Stark kids. So this master who trains archetype, basically, if they die, you call it the Obi-Wan, and if they don't, it's the Mr. Miyagi. So what is the archetypal challenge of this unlikely hero character? Well, their simple goodness and sincerity, which is also wrapped up with their naivete, is going to be tested as they go out into the world. And the challenge, essentially, is to shed the naivete, to learn what they need to learn, while still retaining their principles, their moral compass, their basic goodness. So that's what Dunk is doing, and have no doubt, there are dangers and temptations lurking everywhere. However, the hero is kind of defined by his need to press on and face these challenges. So in the words of Brienne's inner monologue, Brienne, Dunk's descendant of course, no chance and no choice. And of course, Lionel Baratheon says that to Dunk. What chance do I have? Oh, you have no chance. But Dunk also has no choice. He's basically got nowhere else to go. And when the sex workers try to tell Dunk, hey, this is a dangerous line of work that you're in, he says that exactly. He says, I am not troubled with a wealth of options. And so essentially what's going on in that scene is they are comparing his job to theirs by saying that Dunk has to put his body at hazard for the pleasure of strangers, which is what they're doing. And so they're telling Dunk, find a safer trade, even as one of them is lying there playing dead because corpse fetish apparently is a thing. Little dead girl role play is apparently a Manfred Dondarrion's cup of tea. Nothing but tea in my cup. That's all. No corpse fetishes. I do have a fetish level appreciation for this California local wildflower honey that I've been putting in my tea lately, though. That's good stuff. And so getting back to the scene, one of the sex workers says to Dunk, be good to your body, knight. It's the only one you're like to have. And the clear implication is that Dunk could end up a corpse for the entertainment of nobles like Manfred Dondarrion, who finds a sick, twisted pleasure in all this. All right, so you see the dragon here and the Jason and the Argonauts Greek, there's a name for this. It's a dagger, and this will give you something to tell me in the comments, I guess. But yes, we're talking about dragon slayers and heroes, of course. And so let's just go over the lyrics of the little narration that Tanzel Too Tall gave over the story of, it turns out, Serwyn of the Mirror Shield. So it goes like this. I wrote this all down carefully. Where have all the good men gone, and where are all the gods? Where's the streetwise Hercules to fight the rising odds? Is there a white knight upon a fiery steed? Late at night, I toss and turn, and I dream of what I need. I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero till the end of the night. He's got to be strong, and he's got to be fast, and he's got to be fresh from the fight. I need a hero. Holding out till the morning light. He's got to be short, and it's got to be soon, and he's got to be larger than life. Larger than life. That's okay. So those, obviously, it's not the lyrics from Tanzel's narration. You can see how archetypal the hero stuff is, though. You know, as any song about a hero is going to apply somewhat to someone like Dunk. But here are the actual lyrics. Our brave hero forges on, leaving all he knows behind, and Dunk is definitely doing that. A father and a friend may seem the world unkind. Fate has set his lonely path through corridors of chance. A boy from nothing risks it all, ignoring looks askance. So that's obviously Dunk. He's getting many looks askance. He is the boy from Flea Bottom, the boy from nothing, and he is risking it all because he can't even afford to pay the ransom if he loses his first joust. Perhaps he's only stupid, holding fast his mirror shield. Great honor his ambition, must keep a truth concealed. For if his humble shape is bared, a foul and fiery demise, should the dragon discover none but a man in great disguise. So this is about Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, who hid behind his mirror shield while approaching the dragon Arax. And this is a legend. We don't know when this happened, thousands of years ago, but just go with me. Because he's approaching behind this presumably large mirror shield, the dragon can't see his form and instead only sees his own reflection, which I guess entrances the dragon. And so Serwyn is able to approach Arax and kill him with his spear. So basically this is kind of similar to Perseus and the Medusa. Perseus using the mirror to, approach Medusa safely. The mechanics are a little different, but it is obviously inspired by that. Now, Dunk is not hiding beneath a mirror shield. His disguise is far less glorious. He's a true hero disguised as a humble hedge knight, or even a farmer, if you want to say that. And even Dunk's slouching that Lionel points out, it's meant to help Dunk avoid notice. So that's part of his disguise. He's no hero, he's just a slouching farm boy or whatever. Shout out Wesley and the Dread Pirate Roberts. And then there's yet another truth about Dunk that has to remain concealed. Mild spoiler, this is already implied in the first episode, but not spelled out. Dunk probably was not knighted by Sir Arlen. In the books, it's, every time he's asked about it, it's like, oh, he looks at his foot, or he says something that's kind of vague, like, well, no one else was like to do it. And so in the show, he's come up with this whole story about this scene that we did not see, basically. So both his true nature as a real hero is hidden, and he himself is kind of an imposter. He has imposter syndrome, and technically he shouldn't be able to enter the tourney. Raymond Fossaway looks at Dunk and calls him half man and then half man, half giant. And this should make us think of Tyrion, who's called half man, but who casts a giant shadow. Remember when he came to the wall, Maester Aemon's like, oh, a giant walks among us. And then in one of the chapters with Jon near the wall, he cast a giant shadow as he walked into the feast hall. And the idea here is that Tyrion is a small man in stature, but casts a large shadow on the world, meaning he's going to shape the way that the events unfold in the rest of the story. So Dunk, much the same. He's tall in stature, but humble and small in status. He's a nobody. He's a peasant. He's basically invisible to the nobles. Again, it's not really a spoiler to say he's going to have an important destiny and shape the future of Westeros and all that stuff. And then finally, we've been talking about the Dragon Slayer legend. There are dragons here. There's a bunch of Targaryens, and you can tell from the previews that Dunk is going to come into conflict with seemingly Aerion because these shots seem to show them beating the crap out of each other on the tourney field. So Dunk will be put in this role of Dragon Slayer hero. We'll have to see how that turns out. And if you want a more spoilery analysis of this, then check out my Dragon Slayer video. All right, we're not going to spend as much time on the rest of these as we did with Dunk, the unlikely hero. But let's talk about Manfred Dondarrion, the lecherous, entitled noble. This is a very different kind of hedonism than Lionel Baratheon. It's presented as inherently corrupt from the beginning. As the women say, this one likes wives. So he takes his pleasure at the expense of others explicitly. And then there is the dead girl roleplay stuff. So this guy, I don't know if that's kink shaming to say that you shouldn't be a necrophiliac. I'm not a psychologist, but yeah, it seems a little twisted. So think of some of the rich, and I got in trouble for making a political comparison last time, but just think of some of the rich and powerful people and how twisted that we now know they are with their secret islands and goings on. I'll just say that. So Manfred Dondarrion would fit right in at said islands. Yeah, you get my meaning. He talks about wanting to turn the whole world red, as in sowing his royal oats and having a bunch of red-headed bastards, and obviously even the sex workers that he picks out have red hair. So he's got a thing for red hair. It's very narcissistic because it's his hair, so he wants everyone to look like him. I don't know. But the big moment comes when Dunk seeks him out because Dunk needs a sponsor to get him enrolled in the lists. And Dunk's old master, as we saw, Sir Arlen took a wound, a pretty nasty. I would never want to have an arrow stuck into me and then yanked out, but Sir Arlen did that on behalf of Manfred Dondarrion's father during something called the Vulture Hunt that's down in Dorne, tracking down those tricksy Black Months and various other Dornish rebels. And the bottom line is that Manfred doesn't give a flying you-know-what for Dunk or Sir Arlen. Dunk is obviously there trying to get into the tourney. It means a lot to him. Can you just put in a word for me? And he's like, what is that to me if you can't enter? So we're probably going to meet more nobles like Manfred Dondarrion. He seems representative of the class in general. Like, there's going to be a lot of nobles that basically only consider other wealthy and powerful people to be people at all or people worth talking to. But Manfred Dondarrion certainly makes an excellent example right off the bat. So next we have Stefan and Raymond Fossaway, the brothers fighting, although they are only cousins. Fortunately, archetypes aren't technical, it's more of a vibes thing. And because they are from the same house, House Fossaway, their fighting is something of a civil war. It's an internal dispute and struggle. It's like fighting against your brother or sister. So the first thing we notice, all the Fossaway insults and humor is apple-coated, which is kind of delightful. So the younger Fossaway, Raymond, who's only a squire, he's not a knight yet, he's not yet ripe. And of course, Dunk is not yet ripe also. A lot of these external archetypes of the other characters actually do reflect back on Dunk. So he's not yet ripe. He's going to have to slay the dragon potentially like Serwyn of the Puppet Show. And then we see that Elder Stefan, he's rotten to the core, kind of like Manfred Dondarrion. He's a rotten apple. And we hear from Raymond that Stefan likes to spar with people before the joust so he can give them little injuries, which will then give him an advantage, kind of like Gladiator, injuring Maximus before we fight him, because we can't really take him on. So Stefan, cruel and also a little bit cowardly. And there certainly may be other shiny on the outside but rotten on the inside knights lurking about, so watch out for that. Then we have the knock the seeds out of him, which is just funny. The apple symbol also builds on the fruitfulness of the reach, the wealth of the nobility, which we see on display here. And there could also be a bit of a Garden of Eden, loss of innocence illusion. Dunk is sort of losing his innocence. And I couldn't help but notice that Dunk is eating, it's like a strawberry fruit tart, but it looks kind of like an apple that he's biting into when he's being interrogated and judged by Lionel Baratheon. So do look out for more brothers fighting in the story. There's at least one other set of brothers, and you can see from the preview that two of the Targaryens are going to end up fighting each other. We don't know which two, I do know, but I'm not going to spoil it. And anytime two people from the same house are fighting, again, that's kind of the brothers fighting motif. It's kind of a civil war. And there was a Targaryen civil war only 15 years ago. If only someone would make a video about it. I made a video about it. Thanks for watching. That's the Blackfire Rebellion. So there's a lot of brothers fight. The Blackfire Rebellion specifically was brothers fighting. Daemon Blackfire, the bastard-born brother of good King Daeron, or Daeron the Falseborn, depending on your perspective. Shout out Grey Waste Tim. And then finally, the Horned God mythology that we talked about in the Lionel video also has a brothers fighting version. That's the Oak and the Holly King, where the Oak King represents summer, the Holly King represents winter, and their fighting is just the cycle of nature repeating. And Stannis and Renly, by the way, are acting that out. Stannis is the Holly King, Renly the Oak King, and Stannis first kills Renly, and then resurrected Renly defeats Stannis at the Battle of the Blackwater. That's really Garland Tyrell, but yeah, you get the idea. And we'll close with perhaps one of the oldest and most widespread myth themes of them all, the Cosmic World Tree. It's everywhere. That's a Cosmic World Tree is everywhere joke. It's the framework of the universe. It's literally the boundary of everywhere. And in case you're only vague or fuzzy on this concept, the Cosmic World Tree is the axis on which the world turns. Or you could say from anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the invisible line between you, the observer, looking up to the pole star. So if you look up at Polaris, the canopy of stars appears to turn around that point, like you're holding an umbrella and spinning it. The shaft of the umbrella, that's the Cosmic World Tree. It's an invisible tree trunk, and its canopy is the canopy of stars. And so this is a shamanism thing. Check out my shamanism live stream. The shaman ascends the world tree into the stars by doing astral flight. And this is why it's the framework of the universe, from the standpoint of the observer on Earth. And so when Dunk looks at the tree near the end of the episode and smiles, and he's like, aha, a tree is the only pavilion a true knight needs. Well, the cosmic tree is a pavilion made of night, of the starry sky. And of course, what does Dunk and Egg see as they look up through the tree canopy lying on the ground? They see a shooting star. And as we've seen on the trailer previews, and as book readers will know, Dunk will soon have a shield with the tree and star motif, based on this vision that they have at the end of episode 1. And of course, the episode started with a tree. And what's happening at that tree? Well, a death and a birth of sorts. Sir Arlen, the old master, is dying. He's being buried beneath the tree. And the knight that is Sir Duncan is born. And you can even see the whole day-night thing happening. Sir Arlen dies and is buried on this rainy night. And Sir Dunk, in the morning, the sun is out and His hopes are up and he's holding the sword and he's entering the tourney. So in the book, the Hedge Knight Dunk has an awful lot of Tree Knight symbolism. It's not just that one shield. There's a bunch of other stuff. We're not going to get into it. Check out our Hedge Knight symbolism reread from back in the day. And Sir Arlen of Pennytree is also a Tree Knight. He's from Pennytree, which is a town named after a tree that everyone nails copper pennies to. However, copper pennies are also called stars in Westeros, and you see the little star on the coin. So the Pennytree is also a cosmic world tree too. It's got a bunch of stars nailed to it. The main thing is that Sir Arlen is from a town named after a tree. What is kind of cool and sort of relevant is the penny mark on the hilt of Sir Arlen's sword, which is now Dunk's sword. It's got the star from the penny coin on it, which makes the sword a star sword. And of course, the legendary hero of A Song of Ice and Fire, the last hero, he probably had Dawn, the sword Dawn of House Dane. And the finest knight that Ned ever knew, and the winner of our Warriors tournament was of course Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning. So yeah, Dunk has a star sword too, and he is the hero of this story. Not quite Arthur Dane, mystique and prestige, but yeah, star sword. And then finally, shout out to Ace Rockman, who messaged me to point out that Bloodraven may have been watching Dunk and Egg meet. There is a bunch of ravens and or crows cawing in the background of that first scene, and we even see one flying away right as Egg walks up to say hi to Dunk. So hi to Bloodraven. Always watching, always listening. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you after episode 2 with the post game. Me and Tim and Estella Graves will be going live only a few minutes after the episode ends, so tune in. We'll take your questions in the chat and discuss whatever we just saw. So thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you then.